Hello everyone, and welcome to Wathan Creations. I recently watched Spirited Away for the first time right when I decided I wanted to learn how to sculpt, and I thought, what better project to start off with than an amorphous blob with little discernible detail? And better yet, why not make three? First, we'll start off by grabbing too much clay, then cutting it down to size. I'll use my fingers to mold and smooth our first no-face into a no-face shaped shape. We'll make sure that he has a flat bottom perfect for standing upright in that signature no-face tech neck. We'll give him a quick brush with some isopropyl alcohol before we cut off our next faceless friend. This time I want some runny fluid texture, so I'm using my ball stylus to try and make it look like he's all drippy and wet. Our final no-face will be seated, so I'm sculpting them directly onto the cork block so that they're in proper seated position. I'll cut out some noodles for arms and a little tiny teacup to hold the green tea he'll be drinking later. Cup and hand are attached with some liquid clay, and into the oven they all go to firm up before I make their signature masks. I forgot to film the mask making process, but I just dented the spots I'll paint later, and then fixed them to the no-face bases with some more liquid clay. I'm casting the clay in some silicone to make molds that I can use for epoxy resin. My hope was to get a gradient from pitch black to translucent clear, but that's only worked for the seated no-face. I'm degassing the silicone with a vacuum chamber to get as much detail as possible from the clay. I'll carefully carve the clay out from all the molds and admire how adequate it all turned out, before mixing up my black and clear resin and saying hi to my cat, Lewis. Into the mold it goes, and then into the cat-proof plastic bin to cure. After 24 hours, I'll demold the resin. I was overjoyed that degassing the silicone worked for the details in the mask and the teacup, though I wish my gradient experiment had worked on all three sculptures. I'll paint the masks with 100 coats of white paint, and then fill the eyes and the mouth with black, and the other bits with a weird purple that I can only hope is movie accurate. The teacup will get a bright and cheerful red with a gold rim on both cup and saucer. Now they're all finished, but these have to stand somewhere. For the scene where No-Face rises from the watery rails, I made two flooded railroads just in case one didn't work out. With my heat gun, I tried to get something that looked like wavy sea foam, but much of this detail is hidden by the rocks I added to hold the rails slightly out of the sea. To make the rails, I cut up some coffee stirring sticks that I borrowed from my workplace, and some silver-painted kebab skewers that I borrowed from my kitchen. I pressed these into the goopy resin and then let it cure for another 24 hours. I have two of these, so if you have any suggestions on what I can do with the second one, please let me know down in the comments. Now I can secure our soggy no-face to the rails with some UV resin and build up the ripples as best as I can, trying to make it look like the water is flowing off as he rises. The second base is where no-face stands out in the rain surrounded by plants. I'll make a floor and a wall using foam board and corrugated paper. Using a mixture of Mod Podge and black paint, I'll build up the muddy textured earth. Then I'll make 3 bushes using dried moss from the local plant store and tiny fake leaves from somewhere else. The Mod Podge is dried, and so now we can paint the corrugated paper maroon. We'll make the walls gray, dabbing them with a paper towel to give them a plaster-ish texture. The mud gets painted a muddy brown, and while I remember to get footage of Mod Podge, I will forget to film myself using the fun static grass applicator. In a few weeks, I'll make it up to you with a nice grassy hill. Our bushes get attached with some hot glue and made to look slightly wet with some UV resin. UV resin makes an appearance again to spill some puddles on our lawn. And then I decide that our bush is missing some flowers. I decide to wing it and make things up as I go by placing some red static grass in dots of UV resin so that I can swirl them around into shapes that I pretend look like flowers. Tiny spots of yellow static grass become the bits that bees like, and then the flowers are hardened and placed on the bush. Then I coat some thin fibers in more UV resin. The resin beads along the strand and looks sort of like a still image of raindrops if you squint and use your imagination. These get placed on the earth wherever I feel rain ought to go, and the excess string is snipped off. If I were more confident in this technique, I would have done more, but I wasn't sure if more would be better, or if I would indulge in so much excess that I'd turn a peaceful rainy scene into a gratuitous hellish downpour. For the finale, I dig the sitting sculpture out of the trash and measure his booty in coffee sticks. I build the chair using poorly measured cuts and lots of luck. And of course, more UV resin. The floorboards and chair get painted with a brown wash, and then I add some gold paint nuggets on the floor, along with some bath tokens. The chair gets stuck to the floor, and now the last thing we need to do is give No Face a nice warm beverage. I mix some green mica powder with resin to make the tiniest little sip of green tea, and then this gets dripped into his cup, and that makes us finished, and on to the final reveal.